Let us pray. Divine imagination, wisdom, Sophia, God, you are already nearer to us than our own breath. Come as language we can hear ourselves in. Come as acts of resistance, already done and not yet imagined. Come as cries of anger. Come as cries for justice. Come as soothing. Come as singing. Come and set us free. Amen. Come as acts of resistance, cries of anger. Come as cries for justice, soothing, singing. Come and set us free. So began each gathering of a student group called Women's Circle at Harvard Divinity School. It was a group I cherished, and it was a spiritual community that indeed did set me free in so many ways. As a group of people who all then identified themselves as women, I was often struck by the many differences amongst us. Differences in how we presented ourselves, differences in who we loved, even differences in our assigned sex at birth. And yet, as people who identified themselves as women, we all knew what it was like to exist in a society that worked very hard to instill behaviors in us, behaviors that would keep us pleasant, agreeable, helpful, smiling. For some in this community, these stereotypically feminine behaviors, they came quite naturally, and the expectations that had been placed onto them allowed their authenticity really to flourish and to be affirmed. But for others, if not most or many, these feminine expectations, they had been imposed with a force that often felt violent, and a message that had been given to each one's authentic self, that self that God had created them to be, was a failure. And so we came together each week and we prayed. God, come as acts of resistance, come as cries of anger, come as cries for justice, soothing, singing. Come and set us free. On this Sunday here at Covenant, where in both our worship service and after the service in our adult education time, we are exploring gender, and particularly the wide spectrum of gender expressions that exist within and amongst us. I've been thinking quite a bit about that group, Women's Circle. Women's Circle as an example of a faith community that boldly acknowledged how gender expectations around us can indeed damage the truest expression of who God has created each of us to be. In this community of self-identified women, prayer became the cry of the most hidden voices within each of us. The voice that had been told maybe she was too angry. The voice that had been told she was too loud, too sullen, too sharp. In this community, it was this voice that prayed to God. And it was this voice that began to be loved into being.
I would call it a theological nugget. I don't know if I read it somewhere, or if I heard it preached somewhere, or a youth leader taught it to me. I didn't often attend church in the front row like some of our youth in a maid service. But the overall gist of this theological nugget went something like this. One reason Jesus, child of Mary of Nazareth, was not born as a daughter is that the ancient world would not have taken as much notice of a woman teaching about compassion, healing people, and loving the disenfranchised, but a man embodying such things unsettled the world. Now, however I first encountered this idea, it certainly originated from within church circles that I traveled in my late teenage and early 20-something years. And it stuck with me ever since. I would even say it stuck with me as good news. Jesus as gender nonconformist. Jesus, born of Mary, born of God, entered this world and was perceived as a boy who grew up as a man who then defied gender societal norms. In this defiance, there was obedience, a radical obedience to the ways of God as a beloved child of God, an obedience that inspires others to conform not to the skewed societal gender constructs, but to conform to a love of God and neighbor that comes from a place of truth, an authentic love that comes from people's true selves as beloved and snowflake, singularly unique children of God. I was raised in a mainline PCUSA church whose polity, at least since the 1970s, on paper, affirmed the gospel-inspired radical equality of the genders in official church leadership roles. However, sadly, I did not see this lived out very visually. There was no Reverend Julie Avis Rogers before me on a regular basis. The senior pastors I encountered growing up were all men. On the other hand, most of the deacons that I encountered while growing up were women, and their roles seemed mostly regulated to making coffee, serving lunches, cutting up loaves of Wonder Bread into small cubes for monthly communion, and cleaning up. All essential parts of being church, don't get me wrong, but the power differentials based on gender were stark. From my undergraduate degree, I went to an evangelical college where women in prominent leadership roles were even more rare, or rather non-existing. My college not only acknowledged only two genders, but set up structures in dorm life that artificially separated women and men in very problematic ways that further perpetuated harmful stereotypes. All this said, I experienced plenty of church contexts with unhelpful and often harmful perspectives on gender. So thanks be to God for that nugget of a non-conforming, non-binary Jesus. This image has shaped me, and it has helped me filter some of the more evangelical underpinnings of my faith background in some very constructive and dear ways. My early understanding of God was not distant, but as an approachable being who desired to have a healthy, intimate relationship with me, with my truest self. And this relationship was also embodied through the person of Jesus, the incarnated part of God who became fully human so that no human experience was beyond God, no life circumstance, no race, no ethnicity, no gender expression was beyond God's understanding, God's image, and God's blessing. So if God the Creator understands and loves the wildly diverse spectrum that is the human experience, and Jesus came to earth as a boundary-breaking, liberated male, how could I not continue to be a Christ follower? How could I resist following the non-conforming male who tenderly lets children come to them, cries openly at the death of a male friend, allows a woman to wash their feet with her hair, and has the fierce compassion of a mothering hen that is bold and free enough to flip over the tables of oppression, greed, and abuse? Sign me up.
Through communities of radical authenticity like Women's Circle, and through the image of a gender non-conforming Christ, Rob and I have each been blessed with examples of faith that nurtured our most authentic expressions of our gender. Those that might not have been seen as particularly socially acceptable, and yet absolutely reflective of the divine image that was within. This morning's reading from the book of Leviticus reminds us of a great commandment of our faith. It reads, "The alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were foreigners in the land of Egypt." It is a message first heard in our Hebrew scriptures, then repeated centuries later by Jesus, and now repeated millennia into the future by us here today. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as the citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself, for you were foreigners in the land of Egypt. When I hear this passage, my initial instinct is to look around me, to look for those who might seem unfamiliar to me, those that I might call strange or different. But today, As we explore our vast experiences of gender, I want to invite us to turn our gaze inward instead. To take some time in the moments and the days to come and look inward at who resides in you. What parts of yourself might feel alien? What parts might feel unfamiliar, strange, different? What are the parts within yourself that have been hard to love? The alien who resides within you shall be to you as the citizen among you. I imagine that perhaps all of us have these qualities that haven't fit the world's expectation of your gender. This week, I've been asking myself that question a lot. What are those parts within me that have been hard to love? What are those parts within my very being that didn't fit who a girl and then a woman was supposed to be? Who is that alien within me? As I've sat with these questions, there's a lot that comes up, but there's one strong memory from my earliest years that I've been thinking about quite a bit. Those earliest years where I was quite a cautious, discerning, sometimes people read it as sullen child. I wasn't quick to warm up to others, and I often needed some real time to look around, to test the waters before actually feeling safe and feeling happy. And so the result of this quality within myself, that discerning self, is that I didn't smile as much as people seemed to want me to. There were some men in my life, good people, I do think, who would bribe me with presents. They would bribe me with compliments, telling me to just smile more. Then smiling more, I would be much prettier. I heard it again and again, smile, Julie, smile. You'll be so much prettier if you just smile. On some level, I think that I heard this as a message that I was failing at being a little girl. I wasn't smiling as much as I should, and thus my authentic self, that cautious, discerning self, that wasn't how a little girl should be. And so I learned to push that side far away. That was an alien within myself that I wasn't sure was worthy of nurture or love. You shall love the alien who resides within you as yourself. The diversity of ways that we each present ourselves to the world should be a beautiful reflection of God's creation. But how ingrained we are with the idea of two genders that come with a whole laundry list of acceptable behaviors and qualities. As I have found communities like Women's Circle and here at Church of the Covenant, where we take these words from Leviticus to heart, I have gradually begun to see how my ability to love the parts of myself that seem strange or unfamiliar has also increased my ability to love God and to love God's world. That smile is now coming naturally and not imposed. The cautious, discerning child who resides within me and I so wanted to reject is slowly becoming a beloved part of who I am.
Full confession, in preparation for the topic of gender fluidity and sermon preparation, while perhaps Julie was beautifully pondering her childhood memories, I found myself Googling something. Societal gender norms for U.S. males. That's what I typed into the box. And after being reminded of such norms, maybe learning a few things that I didn't know before, a second confession, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the aggressive, dominant, competitive machismo, always being right, all these qualities, so on, that come forward to us as a societal norm around being male. And no doubt this comfort with the norms of my own gender has been exacerbated thanks to where our country has been at these past 2 weeks. Sorry to re-traumatize, but these names, Kavanaugh, Trump, Graham, and countless others, faces and voices of angry, defensive, guilty, untrustworthy, and entitled white men in power, has likely sent many self-identifying males who strive to live ethically, running far from any positive associations with maleness these past weeks. While I've often felt a strong desire to reject, or at least not honor, many of these norms, I have never felt called to change my gender expression. My anatomy, hormone levels, and biology have matched up with my internal sense of being male. And so as our church progresses in our knowledge of a God-infused gender fluidity, I love those words coming together, God-infused gender fluidity, I have learned to refer to myself as a cisgender male, as someone whose sex as assigned at birth matches my current expression as male. Yet, while I see myself as a male, I find myself regularly pushing against what society has defined and has told me to be like. I'm guessing I'm not alone in such pushing against what I would consider to be aliens in my own context. I attribute most of my motivation to counter such traditional norms and claims and claiming a more traditionally feminine quality like compassion or nurture, active listening, cooperation, child-rearing, empathy, to a non-binary Jesus, thanks be to God. My faith in such a Jesus has been strengthened by some fierce women in my life, also thanks be to God, who have clearly long pushed against societal and church norms that promoted a heresy that women would remain passive and silent in certain spaces. Also, I'm indebted to many other brave pioneers who have risked far more than I could ever imagine in their journey simply to be more fully who God has called them to be. They are examples of pioneers who honored their authentic self well enough, those parts of themselves which seemed alien within, those parts of themselves which seemed familiar within, to express their gender identity in their truest way. I want to take a moment to give thanks to God for 3 of these faces of faith who have given me prior permission. Days in absentia, I'm thanking these 3. Days, I first met you in South Africa when you were still a teenager. Well, I was still a teenager, and you were just 4 years old, the same age of my son Rowan. You were full of joy, full of energy, incredibly strong. The world called you Daisy, but the Zulu Farm School skirt uniforms for girls did not suit you. You would come home as soon as you could after school and change and take that skirt off and feel much more fully yourself, putting on shorts and running around that farm. Seeing you some 18 years later in 2010, I was relieved to find that somehow the resources had come together for you to fully transition to the young man you have always felt called by God to be. And I saw then and I see now the face of God in you. Vicki, I first met you on my first day as a pastor at another congregation. At the same time, you were homeless. You wore the wounds of a hard life, experiencing bullying, persecution, and outright anger simply for trying to live out your true identity as intersex, one of the proud 1% to 2% of our population born with some unique mix of male and female anatomy. To say that you have persevered is a wild understatement. As an elder in the church, you carefully walked me through the plurality of biblical gender identities present in our Holy Scripture that Taj reminded of us last week. And you specifically pointed out the unique role of eunuchs in our faith story. Every one of your emails was signed with that quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, "I am not my body." I was deeply honored to work together with you to bring about a celebration of 2-in-1 liturgy service there in church, where we lamented some of the pain of your past and celebrated how God has uniquely made you, as we claim in Genesis, male and female. God created you. And finally, Jack, the youngest of my mentors in faith. You were born in New Zealand, the youngest child of my dear cousin, but at an early age of 5, you knew your body was not fully you. I remember the words of your dear parents as they Skyped me in search of resources when this news first came to their attention. For your home church sadly was saying that this was just a phase you would grow out of. And they promoted a heresy that said that God does not recognize the truth of transgender. And that was painfully used against you and your family. Thankfully, your parents joined right with you, immediately left that church, and found another one. And like your family, that church accepted you, not only accepted you, but embraced your full self and helped you journey into your newly unfolding boy self. When you came to visit Becky and I here in the States, Becky was newly pregnant with Rowan, and your wisdom and insight far exceeded your then 8 years. Nervous about an ultrasound that was to take place that day, you came and placed your hand on you placed your hand on Becky's belly, and you said with deep faith, all will be well. Thank you, dear beloved faces of faith. Jack, Nikki, Days. You help all of us see God more clearly.
We heard today, Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus said, you shall love the beloved Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment.
And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
In today's gospel reading from Matthew, the bar is raised high. The greatest commandment is named, to love. To love God fully, with all that we are. To love with all our heart, soul, and mind. Love with every emotion, breath, and thought. And love our neighbors as ourselves.
The foundation of this high bar of love is love of self. Yes, we are to love others as we love ourselves. But notice this can also be love others as ourselves, as our truest, most authentic selves. Love from the deepest place of who we are. When we love from this most authentic place, from the fullness of who God has created and is still creating us to be, then we will be more able to love the fullness of God's beautiful and complex creation all around us and within us. That is good news.
Dearest church, complex, unique, beloved friends, may we so love.